Welcome. This is the Dignity Village Community Meeting. My name is Marcy Johnson. I work for the City of Alameda in the Community Development Department as the Social Services Manager. And I will now allow or ask the rest of the panel members to please introduce themselves, starting with Elizabeth Funk.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Funk, founder and CEO of Dignity Moves, which is the developer on this project.
Lisa Maxwell.
Hi, I'm Lisa Maxwell. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Alameda.
Steve Good.
I'm Steve Good, CEO of Five Keys. We're the service provider.
Lois Butler.
Hi, I'm Lois Butler, and I'm the Economic Development and Community Services Manager working with Marcy.
Amanda.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Amanda Olson. I'm a program manager in the Community Development Department, working with all of my lovely colleagues that are on this call.
And Yasmin.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Yasmin Obeidi. I am the Civic Spark Fellow, partnered with the City of Alameda's Community Development Department.
Thank you for joining us this evening. We'd like to start with a short slide presentation of the project Dignity Village. Okay, thank you. Dignity Village is located at 2350 Fifth Street in Alameda. The first slide we have for you is a artist rendering of the landscaping. We do want to point out to you that there will be awnings offered above the doors as well. But this is the most recent rendering we have of what the property will look like. In November of 2021, we were able to visit a Factory OS in Vallejo, California. They were the manufacturer for the residential modular units. You see to the left, which is a slide of a modular unit under construction. They lifted it above head height so that the plumbing and electric could be installed from below to make it easier for the workers. The center slide is Lois Butler in our prototype that we went to view. It is a studio-size apartment with ensuite bathroom in each room. It's approximately 168 square feet. And then the last slide on the right is what the prototype looks like from the outside. There were 6 units per prototype per building. This is an early construction photo when they were beginning to make preparation for the site. This is a foundation preparation for the delivery of the modular units. The modular units are placed on this foundation, and it's okay, yes. And here is a video of the units coming online at Bay Farm Bridge. This was on December 21st, 2021, is when the first units arrived. This is placing the lower floor residential unit on the same day of the arrival. You can see the crane work to lift it into place. This is a photo that Yasmin and I took when we were flyering for today's meeting. We distributed flyers in a 500-foot radius from the project. And this is the progress that we saw when we were flying on that day, which was January 12th. Is that correct, Yasmin?
January 17th.
Okay, January 17th. Thank you for the correction. And these are photos from today that I drove by the site and took. The units are in place, the infrastructure work and tying in the electric and the plumbing is happening. And these are the residential units. All the modular units have been delivered to the site. So In addition to the 6 residential units, there are 3 units that are going to be used for common areas for offices, and you'll hear more about that later. Thank you very much, Jasmine, for sharing the show. This is, again, the rendering of what the complex will look like. I'll now ask Steve Good and Lisa Maxwell, either or, to give a brief description or presentation about the project. If there are questions during the presentation, you can raise your hand and we will call on you and unmute you so you can ask your question. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marcy. I can kick it off, and Steve, I appreciate you jumping in to supplement my answer. So the project is a 47-unit project. It could house up to 61 individuals if there were couples that were placed there. We will initially be filling the Dignity Village project with Alameda residents. Steve's organization will provide full wraparound social services. By that, we mean there will be mental health services, potentially educational services, assistance getting a driver's license, whatever an individual's particular needs are, will be able to be assisted by Five Keys organization. As noted, Elizabeth's organization is finishing up the construction, Dignity Moves. We think it'll be a very attractive project when it's finished. We'll have a central courtyard where folks will be able to gather. We will landscape it nicely. It will be fenced, and so we think it'll blend in really nicely to the area.
Thanks. What I would add is that it's a 24/7 gated community. There are no visitors allowed on the property. Pets are allowed with limitations. Our staff will be providing wraparound services that include not only ambassadors that staff the facility to make sure that the guests are safe and that the facility is running smoothly, but 24/7 front desk operations, as well as 24/7 security. We're providing case management for all of the residents. Meals are provided for everybody, as well as assistance with clothing, and toiletries and other necessities that a person may need. The case management is focused on, as Lisa said, on making sure everybody has the documents and that they're housing ready. Because the goal is for them to stay for us for a limited period of time, ideally around 6 months, but up to 2 years, to help prepare them for housing, permanent housing. And that's our job then, is to try and locate another place for them to move on to, which should hopefully be a permanent spot. We also practice a good neighbor policy. Five Keys, we run multiple housing, variations of housing for the unsheltered in San Francisco and Alameda County. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on is a good neighbor policy, where we 3 to 5 times a day walk around the neighborhood, pick up any trash in the immediate area of the facility. If we see any issues with any of our residents, we address them right there. We have a hotline for neighbors to call us should they see trash as a result of our of homeless or any trash at all in the area. We don't anticipate any of our residents creating any trash. We would respond to try and help clean it up, or if there's any issues that we can help respond to. That's what we are there for, is to, get to know the neighbors and address any issues. We're not anticipating any, but we will be there should something come up.
Do we have any questions from the attendees for the panel? Okay, we have
Yes.
2. Okay, thanks, Jasmine.
We have a series. I'll start off with who I have. Weird.
Okay, I can do it, yes. The
Yeah, I don't
first
have access.
question is from Patricia Lim. I'm gonna unmute you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I wanted to, I think, start by letting you know a little bit of who I am. I actually live in the Bayport Alameda development, which is adjacent to Dignity Village, and the site where the transitional housing complex is being constructed now. I've lived on the west end of Alameda for 22 years, and I have grown up in the Bay Area. I have some questions, and I found the information, Mr. Good, that you provided, I think the most interesting from my viewpoint. It looks like 38 of the units are actually going to be designated for the chronically unhoused. And my understanding of the chronically unhoused is that there are actually high rates of dual diagnosis issues. And by that, of course, I mean both mental health and substance abuse issues, as well as prior incarceration. Where are the referrals for these residents coming from? And how is Dignity Village, how are you screening them, both for their willingness to participate in your program, as well as any safety risk to our community?
So thanks for the question. I mean, what you're saying is, it's true. Dual diagnosis is a common thing with the chronically homeless. Screening for the eligibility for the housing doesn't come through the 5 keys. It comes through the county coordinated entry system. The city and other nonprofits have made a concerted effort to try and connect as many of the unsheltered individuals in the city of Alameda right now to the coordinated entry system. They determine, based upon criteria, who would be placed in the facility. When this place is initially filled up, it's people that are currently live in Alameda and are already there. So the individuals that will eventually be placed there, they're already amongst the folks that live in Alameda. I lived in Alameda for 16 years. I just moved out a year ago, and I became quite familiar with the homeless population there because of my work, but also just as a dad with kids living in the city. And so essentially what we're doing is we're taking somebody potentially who lives on the streets with a dual diagnoses, substance abuse issue, mental health issue, and putting them in a 24/7 housing that has security and ambassadors and folks that are trained on how to deal with those issues. So, from my perspective, having somebody off the street, now they can come and go. This isn't a lockdown housing. They still have their rights. They're free to come and go, but they won't be living on the streets anymore. They'll now be accessing services. And one of the requirements for staying in Dignity Village is that you have to access the services, because our goal is to help prepare them to move on.
I would just further clarify that the HUD definition of homeless, of chronically homeless, means that an individual or family has 4 episodes of homelessness within a 12-month period. So while oftentimes the dually diagnoses fall into this category, so do other members of our community who struggle over a 3-year period. Patricia, did you have any further clarifying questions?
No, that was helpful. I have another set of questions, but I think I might wait until I hear a little bit more, because you may very well answer some of them. But like I said, I also sit on the Care Preservation Committee for the Bayport development. We're about 470 homes over here, and being on this end of the island for as long as I have, we've watched it change quite a bit. So one of the issues that we've dealt with in the Bayport Alameda development is safety. It's, I think, something of concern for all of us. So I was curious to know about the group that's coming in and how you're planning to, I think, manage them. It's interesting to me that you said that they're also come and go. So they can leave the site, but perhaps if I'm hearing you correctly, they will be receiving services that will sort of help them sort of navigate moving around better than they are now.
Right. And one of the things that we'll be providing is, all their meals. So that's a big incentive to stay during mealtime. We'll have an activities coordinator on site. So we can, engage the residents in daily activities that will, hopefully they'll want to engage in. We celebrate holidays and parties. We do art events. So we'll have a garden. So the whole idea is to make the facility as attractive as possible. So folks will want to stay. But it's not a locked facility. They're residents of Alameda while on shelter. It's their town too. And we can't keep them in, locked in, but we do work with them as best we can to make sure that they're getting what they need. And, there is a discipline policy and there's a denial of service policy as well. If we have residents that aren't willing to participate and, are disruptive or, create a problem, we would contact, mental health professionals and that work in the city. And if worst case scenario, we'd have to contact the police if something should happen. But in large, those are, we run right now 11 different types of housing in the city, San Francisco and Oakland. And it's very rare that we actually ever have to call the police or the authorities to deal with an issue.
How many staff will be on site? You mentioned that there is 24/7 front desk and security,
Yeah.
but I'm assuming there will be staff there to help provide access to these services as well.
Right. So exactly. So we have case managers at a 1-to-25 ratio. For individuals with more acute needs, the ratio drops significantly. In addition to front desk and security staff, we have a full cleaning crew that's there on staff, making sure that the facility is kept clean and safe. In addition to that, we have the activities coordinator and we have our ambassadors. And our ambassadors, they're the folks that interact with the guests on a daily basis. They do daily room checks to make sure that the rooms are safe and clean. We do a weapons check. Anybody comes and goes, we make sure that they don't have any weapons. We, basically have folks constantly engaging with the guests to make sure that they're safe and everybody else is safe. So we have front desk, security, cleaning crew, case management, ambassadors, and I think activities coordinator. So on any given day, potentially, I can't remember the exact number it is, but something on the order of 9 people, we will be there with the guests.
And what is your policy if one of your residents does run into some trouble? So for example, they do something, illegal or they're not supposed to, or you find a weapon inside their room. What is the policy of the facility
Yeah,
with
so it would
respect to that? Yeah.
Right. It would depend if the weapon was illegal. If it was a legal weapon, we'd confiscate it. They're not allowed to have it. If it was an illegal weapon, we'd have to contact the authorities. Depending upon the egregious nature of the behavior, there are, levels of consequences that we can apply. The most severe would ultimately result in the person being discharged, but that's the last thing we'd want to do, because we feel that folks are better sheltered in with us than being discharged.
Thank you, Patricia. We have several other attendees who would like to ask questions, so we would like to move on in the interest of time.
The next person, okay, the next person is Victor Rolandi.
Oh, I think we have Marlene up here. Yes.
No, Victor was my first stop on mine. I'll select Marlene
Victor
first.
was the first one, and I did unmute him.
Okay. Marlene, we're gonna remove your permission for now and bring Victor back. I don't know what's happening now because when I remove. Okay. Victor, welcome. Are you there, Victor? Okay, yes. Hi, Victor. You're unmuted, but we cannot hear you. Okay, Victor, we're still unable to hear you. If you have a question to ask, you could drop it in the chat or you can email me. I'll place my email in the chat as well. Thank you. Okay, so Yasmin, we'll go with Marlene next.
Yes, Marlene, you please unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm Marlene Hellman, and I live in Bayport also. And my alleyway is directly opposite the Dignity Village, so I can see the construction and everything. I think it's a great idea. I just wondered, is there, can the residents like heat up water for tea? Like, is there a little microwave in the unit, or do they have any ability of like, you know, heating water or?
They will not have an opportunity to do so in their room.
Okay.
However, there is a common kitchen area that folks can access that'll have microwaves and other, you know, coffee pots and things like that where they can go get a snack or heat something up.
Okay. Do they have, is it all studios?
Correct. That's right. With bathrooms.
Okay. And what's the age range of people?
It could be varied. We have 5 rooms reserved for transitional age youth. And then otherwise could be potentially quite varied.
Like, would you say 18 to 65 or?
I think that's fair. Yeah.
And a parent could have a child with them at the
Oh, yeah.
location as well.
But
Oh.
yet not a child on its own, obviously.
Okay. All right. And they're going to be like, what about the medication if they're on medication? Is somebody going to monitor the medication or?
Steve, I'd have to defer to you on that one. Please.
Yeah, so we're talking right now with Cardia Health.
Mhm.
And they're a partner that we work with in Oakland at another shelter about bringing in health services, and we work with the county as well. So the individuals that work there, we work with health providers that help regulate and check on the individuals with their medication. You know, there's a lot of diabetes and other issues that come with being homeless and unsheltered. So by and large, folks are responsible for medicating themselves, but there will be medical staff that will be checking in with individuals on a regular basis, unless the medical staff says that they're not. We can't give them medicine, but it's common for medical staff at our other sites, if it's medicine that has to be administered, they arrange for nurses or medical assistants or somebody else to assist with that.
And do the residents have to pay out of their SSI or Social Security or?
No,
No.
it's 100% free for the residents.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. All right. And will possibly the community, before it's open, have like a walkthrough that we could see it, or is that a possibility, or is that not a possibility?
No, we're hoping to do some sort of a grand opening and invite folks to come and take a look. We would love for everyone to see all the hard
Okay.
work that's gone into the project.
Okay, well, I think that's great. I think you seem to have things worked out, and I hope everything works out. That's all I can say, because, you know, I think that's great, because we do need more places for people who are unhoused, and I see them roaming on the street with their shopping carts, and I feel very sad, especially when it was raining, you know, and I think it's very important, you know, so I think, you know, you have to be very dedicated, and I think you're doing a good job. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Marlene. We appreciate your comments.
Okay.
Thank you,
Yes,
Marlene.
Yasmin, can we try to go back to Victor again,
Mhm.
please? Thank you.
Right, Victor, I will unmute you now.
Hi,
Okay.
Victor. Victor, you're unmuted, but we cannot hear you speaking. Okay. If you have the ability to email me, I've dropped it in the chat, or if you wanted to write your question in the chat. Otherwise, you could try to call in. That's a possibility. All right, we'll try the next question. Tamiko.
Tamiko, you may speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So I'm also a Bayport resident. I think we're probably the residents that are most concerned about this. And so I've lived in Bayport 15 years. I've been an Alameda resident for almost 30 years and have seen the island change considerably, and not all in a bad way. And a lot of my questions have been answered, like children may be living in the facility with a parent. I get that. And I assume they're going to be enrolled in the local schools. And then my question is, if the people were already in Alameda unhoused, or were they unhoused, or were they in some sort of temporary facility beforehand? I mean, I do see homeless in Alameda. There was a kind of a small tent city right outside of the tube during COVID. And I'm wondering if it was those individuals or everyone that's been identified going into this facility are Alameda or were Alameda or are Alameda residences, or are we bringing them kind of from Oakland? I'm still unclear, like the process.
You want me to take that, Lisa?
Sure, Lois, that'd be great.
So the people that will be going into the facilities will be a combination of folks that may have resided in our emergency housing. We have emergency housing at Alameda Point. We have people who are staying at Safe Parking at Alameda Point, at Village of Love that may go in there. We have people who are on the street in tents and in vehicles that may go in there. And then we have people who are have identified themselves as Alameda residents, excuse me, that may go in there. So it's a combination of all those folks, and they will be part of the coordinated entry system, and we will look at the coordinated entry system. Well, they'll be assigned from the coordinated entry system. Those are the initial people that will go into the Dignity Village.
And let me tag on to that just a little bit. There's also individuals that have been staying at the warming shelter at Christ Episcopal Church, which has been running quite a bit through the wet weather. So folks have been entered into the coordinated entry system at that site as well as folks who sometimes stay with the Village of Love, which is in addition, they have some spots in addition to the safe parking. So a lot of these folks are going to be people that we're familiar with and we know are residents of Alameda.
Got it. Thank you. That's
Specifically,
really
Tamiko, I just wanted to mention that our mid-county region that is covered in the coordinated entry system for the county does not include Oakland as a city in mid-county. And the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act does allow displaced children to attend their school of origin. So if children were homeless and arrived at Dignity Village for residential service, they would be able to choose if they wanted to continue at their existing school or enroll at the local school. So that's not necessarily a given.
got it. Okay. Very helpful. Thank you. And then another quick question. When is the expected date for the for move-in? for these people?
We're expecting to get a temporary certificate of occupancy in early to mid-April. And then we have 90 days from the TCO or the CO? TCO?
TCO.
Okay, so we have 90 days thereafter to work on getting substantially occupied.
And TCO means temporary occupancy permit.
But that will be something we'll be working on, or we are already working on with our social services team in the city who communicate amongst themselves to sort of help identify likely candidates for the Dignity Village.
Got it. And then is there any need for volunteers or like donate clothing as people start to move in, and especially for the children that may be there? Clothes, books, electronics. Will you be taking any donations, or do you need any also time to volunteer?
I think that we will. Steve, do you have specifics on what you might need the most?
Yeah, we definitely will be taking donations. Clean clothing is great. Socks are great. Underwear is great. All sorts of clothing is wonderful. We will be keeping on site a store of clothing for the residents as they need it. Working electronics are great as well, as long as they're working in good condition. If we do have kids, toys would be terrific. That'd be great. The volunteer is something that we hope to establish, but it's going to take us a minute to settle in and make sure things are running smooth before we start, working with volunteers. But down the road, that would be wonderful, is to have a regular, consistent hand of volunteers. Although one area that we do take volunteers in all the time at other sites is helping with gardens and activities. But those are kind of like, fixed length projects. But those are things that are great for us to, have volunteers with.
And
Thank you,
we-
Tamiko. We
Thank you very
need to
much.
move to the next we need to move to the next attendee because we have several people online for questions.
The next attendee is Keith Jaslow.
Hi, Keith.
Hi, actually, my name's Sonia. I'm Keith's wife. We're both Bayport residents. We've been here. We're original owners. Just a question, and thank you guys for providing this opportunity for us to ask questions. Wanted to understand a bit more about drug policy within the community, and also, Marcy, to let you know that chat is disabled. So if you are throwing something in there, it's not showing up.
Thank you for that. I will change my name to my email address for questions for people who are unable to unmute.
Steve,
Yeah, so that was my
Yeah.
question, understanding a bit more about the drug policy. What is, I just would like to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure, it's a fairly low barrier entry facility, and it's harm reduction, which means that we probably expect some of our residents to use drugs. Drugs are not allowed to be used in any open areas, but we can't necessarily stop them from using drugs in their rooms. All of our staff are trained in Narcan. And part of our job is making sure that the rooms are safe and clean. So if we saw drug paraphernalia and stuff like that, we'd ask them to put it away. We can't have stuff sitting around like that, but we don't confiscate their drugs or any paraphernalia. That goes against the county's harm reduction policies. We will be offering, substance use treatment programs, including NA and AA, but in addition to that, other programs as well. Cognitive behavioral groups for substance abuse. And if we saw anybody outside of the building, not only in the public courtyard, but on the perimeter, any of our folks using drugs out there, we would stop them and do whatever we including having to call for assistance from the city to help if they refuse to, follow our lead on that. But that also then would lead to potential consequences and could jeopardize their placement in the facility if they were to, ignore our policies around drug use.
Thank you.
Do the residents have any like kind of, how do I say this? Do they have to qualify somehow to be eligible to be there?
It's not a real qualification system. They have to be on the county's coordinated care, entered into the coordinated care system. And then we work with a social service provider, or the county works with, who helps screen the applicants and looks at the various criteria that are considered, such as, in this case, Alameda residency, health, various criteria. And Marcy, Lois, feel free to supplement if you'd like.
And just a quick follow-up question, and then I think we're done, is that, so if for some reason a resident is evicted from the facility, what happens to them?
We would, we'd work with the county to try and find a placement for them elsewhere, to the extent possible, but at that point, it's kind of beyond our control. It's kind of up to the coordinated entry system in the county, whether we're able to find another placement for them or not. I should also say, there is an appeals process as well. And so if we wanted to evict somebody, they would have a right to an appeal. So it's just not like we can, there are safeguards in there to protect both the guests and the community. And so, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move to our next person, which is Bernice. Yes. Oh. Okay, Bernice. If you'd like to unmute and ask your question.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for hosting this session. I have two questions. One is to clarify, when is the move-in date for the residents? You mentioned that it's sometime in early April. Is that 90 days after that, or is that in April?
Within that 90-day period following the April completion or mostly substantial completion, we'll begin getting occupants in on kind of a rolling basis over that period of time.
Got it. Okay, so starting in April and throughout.
April, May, June, yeah, through June.
Okay, got it. And then the second question is, are there any restrictions when the residents may not be allowed to go outside of the building, just so they can get more rest and just stay within the building?
No, they're residents like you are a resident, and you can leave your house at any time.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, Bernice. Yasmin, let's try Victor again, and then I have one write-in, which I'll read next. And if anyone else has questions and are having difficulty, my email address is listed as my name.
And there's a question in the chat for you, Marcy, as well.
Thank you.
Okay, Victor, please unmute yourself.
All right.
Okay.
I'd like to remind that the chat feature is now open. You can chat in any of your questions.
Okay, Marilyn has a question in the chat. Has there been active outreach to the residents at the Main Street encampment?
Yes, absolutely. We do street outreach, and we have provided people with information on the Dignity Village project.
And to expand on that, we also did a session to acquaint folks to the opportunity for Dignity Village at the Village of Love, as well as the warming shelter. So we're trying to get the word out to people that this is a housing option that's coming online as broadly as we can.
Thank you, Marilyn. There's a question we received via email from Ian. Are there any disqualifiers that make someone ineligible for the lottery system? For example, sex offenders or murderers?
The only thing that I can think of, because there could be children at the facility, would be sex offenders. But murderers, no, that wouldn't be a disqualifier. Or someone convicted of murder, assuming they serve their time.
Jerry Mitchell, I see a comment from you that you said, I don't seem to be able to participate, but I'd like to. Did you have a specific question, Jerry? Or do you want to be elevated to speak? Let's see. Let me bring him up, Yasmin. Thanks. Hi, Jerry. Did you have a
Great.
question to ask?
Yes, thanks very much. I am a Bayport resident as well, my wife and I, but we came from Austin, Texas, so we're quite familiar with Community Village there, which is a very extensive operation. It's been around for quite a while. We also did a lot of work through St. Vincent de Paul with the homeless, as I do here with St. Barnabas and through the center downtown. So we're pretty familiar. And I think we found in Austin that the stricter coordinated entry assessment was critical to qualify individuals. There are a lot of criteria. There are a number of homeless that we wish we could house, but are unwilling to sometimes live in a confined space with rules. Alcohol abuse can be quite a problem, as well as drug abuse, or we can call those drug abuse, but we were talking more about paraphernalia than we were alcohol abuse. So those are critical issues, and we know we have a lot more people that are homeless and can be housed in 47 units, at least over a first 6 to 2 year period where we're working through the initial batch. So I think that's really critical to reassure people that there is a coordinated assessment process that is fairly rigorous. It's just simply we have to make sure that people are willing to abide by rules. One of the things at Community Village is that everybody had a little job to do. Now that was a larger area in square footage and so forth. It was in the countryside, but having residents have a buy-in in what they're doing and the cleanup of the facility and little daily chores was very helpful out there. And the last comment really not a comment, but a question in this case is, many of our homeless love their possessions, and we know that this is a huge issue whenever we pass by homeless encampments and see what's going on, whether in Alameda or in Oakland or elsewhere. How do you propose to deal with individuals who can't bring their possessions into that very small space that you have? Thank you.
Right. There's first, I want to say that the idea of getting the guests involved is huge. We provide incentives and gift cards and things like that for guests at our other facilities to help them, engage in cleaning and, odd jobs around the place. That's a big part of our program. When somebody's accepted Dignity Village, we will work with them to help them make the decision. In some cases, it's a tough decision of what they can take, bring in, and what they can't. We will have on-site storage for overflow of some items, but there's not a lot that we will be able to take because, like I said, it's a relatively small space and storage is small, so folks will be limited. There's under bed storage in each room. There's a fair amount of storage, but it is going to be a conversation with what they can bring in and what they can't bring in.
Thank you, Steve and Jerry. We have some questions in the chat from Neil. Will the residents be required to get a job by a certain time period after moving in?
No, there's no requirement for employment.
From Agnes, who we heard from earlier, how many of the approved residents are originated from the city of Alameda?
Initially, all of the residents we are hoping to have come from the city of Alameda. So that is the plan.
Jerry has a follow-up question. He would like to know, what about pets? Another issue for many homeless.
Thanks, Jerry. Yes, pets will be permitted. I think Steve mentioned that he said with some rules attached to that, of course, some behavioral rules. And we will also work with FOSS in order to get pet care, mobile pet care to come to the site to assist the residents.
Okay, can we try Victor one more time? Please and thank you.
Yes, Victor.
Hi, Victor, are you still with us? Are you able to unmute? Okay, any questions that you have post our session, you're also welcome to write to me at mjohnson@alameda.ca.gov. I forgot my email address for a second. Okay. Elizabeth, did you want to speak a little bit about the program to adopt a room?
Yes, thank you. There's a question earlier about volunteer opportunities. And so when we are getting ready to open and we have a closer date, what we love to do is invite the neighborhood to each adopt a room, which means to pick one room and decorate with custom bedding and decorations, welcome notes, welcome baskets. It's really a wonderful way for the local neighborhood to come see and get familiar with what's happening there, and obviously to give back. And so we will watch for that. We'll be sending out invitations, and we'll probably host it on maybe 2 different weekend days that you can come and see and preview and be a part of it.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
There's another question in the
Yes,
chat.
Neil has a follow-up question to: are residents required to have a job? A follow-up: if residents are not required to get a job, how will they move out and pay for permanent housing?
Right. We can't require anybody getting a job. It's not one of the county requirements, and it goes against the county requirements. But most of the folks that we're moving out, we've been moving into highly subsidized housing. We definitely want to get folks employment ready and help them get a job, but we can't require it. A lot of individuals end up reconciling with family members as well, but the majority would move on to some sort of permanent supportive housing that's highly subsidized.
Thank you,
I
Steve.
will try Victor one more time.
Okay, and then Patricia after.
Mhm.
Thanks, Yasmin.
Victor.
Victor Rolandi, are you there? Okay, let's try Patricia, please.
Okay. All right. Patricia.
Hello again. Yeah, hello again. This has been really informative. I just wanted to say that I've actually learned a lot and been somewhat reassured. I have 2 questions. One is a quick one for Elizabeth Funk. I am interested in adopting a room. How are you going to post or publicize that opportunity?
So that's going to be the city who's going to have these email addresses, but they'll also be on the Dignity Move site and elsewhere. There'll be there's a place to sign up for more information. We'll be sure to get it out to this group.
Okay.
Thank you for your interest in that. It's
Yes, thank
been
you.
very popular.
And then I have a question that I wanted to address to, I guess, the folks that are working in Alameda on this project. And it's a follow-up on a previous question about Community Village in Texas and the vetting process. So I've heard a little bit of everything and I'm a little confused. I've heard something about the coordinated entry system. I've heard something about mid-county and the fact that it does not include Oakland. I've heard that murderers are not disqualified from being housed in Dignity Village. And I'm honestly a little bit more confused now than I was earlier about who is coming to Dignity Village. And is the city of Alameda, because, you know, obviously I understand that a lot of this has been funded through grants, but a portion of this is funded out of the city of Alameda and presumably the taxes that we pay. So I am curious about, you know, are you going to be involved in screening the residents or potential residents? You know, I heard mention that being a resident and something about health being 2 factors, but not really anything else. And I think that's really my main concern is, obviously, this is a wonderful idea. I think we all want it to succeed. But there are, my husband similarly works with the homeless population out of San Francisco. He's an emergency medicine physician and has worked at San Francisco General Hospital. Over 50% of his patients are the unhoused and homeless. And there are problems. So how do you figure out who the best candidates are for this housing, for transitional housing, and to be able to help them so they have the potential so you can help them move along? Because I certainly want everybody to have a chance, but I am concerned about that. How are you going to balance that? And is the city going to be involved in ensuring that, these are Alameda residents, that these are really the best candidates in this first batch that are going to come through and have a real shot at moving forward? What goes into that?
So we are using the coordinated entry system through the County of Alameda. And the coordinated entry system has a question to the folks who are being entered into the system, where they are from, and how they identify themselves in terms of their location. And so the screening of the participants will be based on that self-identification. And also the folks who are running the coordinated entry system, they are actively involved in Alameda. They do case management in Alameda and are familiar with Alamedans. So we are signing people up that did not sign up in the past because there was no Alameda location. We are trying to make sure that the folks who would be qualified to locate at Dignity Village are being signed up so that they will be in that group of people that initially locate at Dignity Village. And I'm sure that I didn't answer all your questions. If someone could take the rest. Thank you.
I can just supplement. I was the one who mentioned like a health condition. So once you're in the coordinated entry system, then you are ranked among a variety of, I don't know if ranked is the greatest word, but there's a variety of factors that are looked at. And it would be age and health condition and, things that would make you a particular strong candidate because your need is particularly high. So the folks we put it through sort of all those factors will be looked at, and the county will come up with a list of people who are the top qualifiers. We then have to go find those people because these aren't people with, a mailing address, and you just don't knock on their door. So then you have to locate them, invite them to have this opportunity to come live at Dignity Village. And as we talked about earlier, many will take us up on it and some will decline. So we will continue on down the list in that way.
Yeah, I wanted to add just one additional question about somebody who has a prior criminal conviction history. And we don't turn those individuals away. And I would say that, at least from my perspective, if somebody had propensity for, criminal activity and they were homeless, I'd rather have them in a situation where they're getting case management, where they're off the streets, where they have supervision, they have access to things that they wouldn't have access to otherwise. All those things, in my mind, make for a safer community than having, that individual potentially just on the street without meals provided for them or clean housing, case management, opportunities for treatment, stuff like that. When we see individuals come directly from the street into shelter, there's a stabilization period. And it's a little bit of a learning curve to get used to being back indoors. But after a while, people stabilize. And so many of the acute issues that they face on the street are no longer present. Now, that doesn't resolve, individuals that have mental health or, heavily involved in addiction, but even those folks do stabilize to a degree. And the behavior changes, their appearance changes. They're literally not the same person that was living on their survival mechanism of day to day. Where's my next meal going to come from? Where am I going to sleep tonight? Am I going to be attacked? So much changes in that person. So you really see a different person after a couple of weeks in shelter.
Thank you, Steve. We have questions in the chat that we would like to get through, and we're short on time. RN wrote in saying, I thought I read that this will also serve those aging out of foster care. Will there be an allocation to this population? The answer to that, RN, is that we have an allotment of 5 units for, as Lisa Maxwell mentioned previously, for TAY, transitional age youth. They do not necessarily have to be qualified because they're aging out of foster care. It can just be a youth between the ages of 18 and 24 who are in threat or are currently homeless. And we have a set aside of 5 units for that purpose. Michael asked, as a resident of the neighborhood, what measures are being taken to ensure that there will not be an increase in crime? This is a large concern. Lisa or Steve, do you want to field that one?
Sure. What we've learned from operating housing units, particularly one in San Francisco at the Embarcadero Center, which has probably received the most national attention when we launched that facility back in 2018, was a concern about an increase in crime. And what we've actually seen is we had initially bi-weekly reports, then monthly reports. Now they're only quarterly reports where we met with the community, and consistently the police at every of these meetings where we participated, the crime statistics in the areas around the Navigation Center decreased for lots of reasons. One is we're getting home individuals that were homeless there. They're no longer on the streets. 2, we have a presence where we don't allow people to loiter or hang around the facility. There are no visitors allowed to this place. If our residents are loitering about the outside, we'll ask them to come in or, move on, go someplace else. Part of our job is to help ensure the area and the meat, within reason around the building is safe and clean. And because we're there, if we see things that aren't okay, we'll either address it ourselves or we'll call the city, the authorities for assistance.
Thank you. We have, including Victor, we have 4 members who are attendees who would like to speak. And we have 1 minute left. So is everyone okay proceeding? Yes, okay. So can we bring up Savannah? It's your motion detector, yes. Savannah?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, just a couple notes popped up. Sorry. First, I just want to say thank you to everyone for holding this space tonight for people to hear about this. It's really exciting, and it seems like a really meaningful way to express community care in Alameda and change a lot of people's lives, hopefully. So I'm just really grateful for it. I listened tonight and I heard a lot of maybe kind of community unfamiliarity with some like larger level concepts like housing first or harm reduction. Some kind of the larger issues and sort of root causes of homelessness, and potentially even of the affiliation of homelessness with crime, which is not always appropriate. So I'm just curious if maybe Steve, you can answer this, or Elizabeth, if your organizations, as kind of part of that good neighbor sort of philosophy or policy, if you incorporate some like political education for the community to talk about some of those issues and introduce folks who may be less familiar with sort of the challenges of homelessness and sort of the wide sort of wider picture. And if you don't, if there's a need for that, if you kind of, if the city staff can kind of coordinate on that, or maybe if just someone can kind of speak to that a little bit. But again, thank you so much for holding this space to hear more about it.
Thank you, Savannah.
Just briefly, one of the things we've done in San Francisco that we've talked about continuing here with Alameda is continuing community meetings after we open. And as those meetings take place in San Francisco, we brought in experts in a wide range of fields from, like I said, the police always attend the meetings. We have mental health folks exactly to do that, to help educate people This is a new thing for so many individuals. You only hear about homeless on the news or what you see. But there's a whole another side to it that's really complex. And, thanks for your comment, because bringing in people to help provide as much education as possible at future meetings is definitely something we want to do.
You to Michael.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties. No, I mean, so I'm a resident of Bayport, and I think I've seen some of these things in San Francisco really not work out well for those people who are residing there, and also the residents as well, the neighborhood. So I guess my biggest concern is in Bayport, including myself. I have very small children, and there are quite a few families with children here in Bayport as well. So I guess back in lines with Steve, what you said about not discriminating in terms of having people in the residency who have prior criminal records, who have committed crime or been in jail. I guess if an individual were to be at your residence and would be continuously convicted of crimes, whether they be large crimes or whatnot, I guess where does the rope end is what I'm saying.
In a couple areas. I mean, one of the things when you think about San Francisco and the challenges they have there, the majority of the facilities that are housing the formerly unsheltered are in the exact areas where there was, in excess of, 800 tents on the street. And one of the most, intensive areas where homeless congregate and lives for so many years. And so the scale and magnitude of what happens in San Francisco, doesn't even begin to compare to Alameda with its 271 homeless individuals versus the literal thousands in San Francisco. As far as, where does the line get drawn? Well, there's a number of things. If the person is absent from their unit for a certain amount of days, they lose their spot. And so if a person is gone, we can't hold if they're continuously being incarcerated, the potential exists that we would have to go through the process of denial of service because they're taking a space for somebody else who would need that spot. So there are, things in place. If their conduct continues to be, if their conduct is, exhibiting criminal behavior on site, that's not tolerated and allowed. That too would be grounds for them losing their spot at Dignity Village. Criminal behaviors, not accepted. Violent behavior is never accepted. That would almost be grounds for an immediate removal. But our goal is to try and keep them there as long as possible because, like I said, they're homeless individuals right now. They're currently on the streets. We want them inside and be able to move them on to the next place.
Thank you, Steve. We have Deborah.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me?
Hi,
Yes.
Deborah. Yes.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I joined a little late. I hope I'm not repeating something that was covered. Thanks for having this meeting. And yeah, I live across the street from Dignity Village. And so what was just said is kind of a question I was thinking is, what is the expected length of stay for a resident of Dignity Village? Like how long in your program do you anticipate folks staying there? And yeah, are there concrete next steps in place for them? Like, is this a phase of some long-term, becoming permanent, having permanent housing? And then my second question is, like I said, I live across the street and I heard something about nobody can have visitors. That sounds a little restrictive, but on the other hand, there's like no parking. What about people like if they get cars, like they can't have visitors? It's like basically it's kind of an unusual space. Has that been
Okay, Deborah, you're breaking up a little bit, but I think your end question was about parking.
Yeah, my end question was about parking for the residents, and you said something about them not having visitors. And my second, the first part, which maybe you didn't heard, yeah, I have bad reception, is how long do you expect folks to stay in Dignity Village? Is this a phase? Is there a next step?
Okay,
I think we've heard her questions,
Thank
so
you,
maybe we
Deborah.
can
Yeah.
answer them. One thing is we're expecting people to stay at Dignity Village between 6 months and 2 years. Hopefully the former and not the latter. We will work with them to get permanent housing. Steve, if you could answer some of the other questions that she asked, I wanted to just let her know that I think we heard her questions.
Yeah, right. Like Lois said, 6 months, we hope to help identify a place for that person to transition to after that. This is an intermediate step to help stabilize a person who's been homeless on the street, to help prepare them for the next step in their housing journey, which ideally would be some form of permanent supportive housing. It may not always be the case. It might be transferred to another shelter. The idea that we have them for 2 years is so we don't have to turn them back to the street, so we can get them stabilized and ready to go with their documents, everything they need for their next location. Maybe it's a family, maybe it's subsidized housing in Oakland or San Francisco or some other place in Alameda County. Probably not San Francisco, but in Alameda County. They're not allowed visitors because we want to be able to control what comes and goes from the facility. And everybody that comes in, we screen for weapons, we wand them. We do a temperature check, a COVID check on everybody as well. We need to make sure that, what we can control, and having visitors coming in, people we don't know, could jeopardize the safety of other individuals. As far as the cars go, that's correct. There's very limited parking there. We're not entirely sure what our staffing parking needs are, but we'll also have, medical providers and other folks that come and provide services that will need priority for the parking, which would leave very little, if any, parking left for the guests. So, unfortunately, the parking would be left to, the community. And the question though is, we really don't know, how many guests have vehicles versus who don't. In some of our places, and I'd say at our place in Oakland, maybe a third have a vehicle.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And the last question in the chat from Marilyn: are there any disqualifying issues as part of the screening process?
I think, as Lisa was saying earlier, there's, they try and identify people that this facility would best meet their needs, perhaps somebody that's older or has acute medical conditions, or disability, or someone that really needs to get off the street. That, those sort of things factor in the queue of who's eligible to come in. If we have any minors on the property, a sex offender wouldn't be able to enter the facility because of the youth. So that would be a screening, a kick out question, but beyond that, that's the extent of what I would know is, what we're in, obviously if somebody's acutely mentally ill, I mean, not acute, severely mentally ill, or just their addiction is so bad, that this wouldn't be the right facility for them. They would need, a higher level of care. And there are places like there's Oak Gates Hotel, which we actually run, which is for medically fragile homeless. That would be a better situation than somebody who is really quite ill.
Thank you, Steve. Michael, we're going to take this as the last question this evening. We'll elevate you. Are you there, Michael? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, just as a kind of a continuation of my last question in regards of a theoretical situation where someone with a record, a police record, or was incarcerated happened to commit additional crimes in the neighborhood or whatnot. So what is, again, if you could give me a sense of, is it like, 1 strike you're out, 2 strikes you're out, 3 strikes you're out? What kind of decision parameter dictates, you've created too many infractions or whatnot?
Yeah. So if somebody was to commit a crime in the neighborhood, unless the police came and informed us of it, we wouldn't know about it. If the person was incarcerated for a period of time, unless we were notified by the police that they were incarcerated or a case manager that was working with them, it simply could become a situation of the person was, was released because they were a no-show after X amount of days. I believe it depends on what the facility is that we operate. Some are as few as 72 hours, some are, up to, a week. I'm not sure that we've established a policy on this site yet. Might be a week or 10 days. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to look like here. If somebody committed a crime inside the facility, it would depend on the seriousness of the crime. If it was, a simple infraction, that might be a 1 or 2 or 3. If it's just a physical assault, that might be, you're out the next day. It just depends on the severity of the crime because everything is different. And again, if somebody's committing crimes outside, that's a police issue. That's not necessarily, that goes beyond our scope of work when somebody's committing crimes that involve the police. But again, if they're incarcerated for, any period of time beyond a week, that would certainly start getting to the time of they probably won't be, need to move on.
Thank you to the attendees and the panelists for your attendance tonight. We appreciate the conversation. This recording will be made available post this evening. And again, you are welcome to write in with any follow-up questions or interests to my email address, which is mjohnson@alamedaca.gov. Thank you very much for being with us. Good night.
Good night.